Your Excellency, President Felix Tshisekedi, Chairperson of the African Union and President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Excellencies, heads of states and government, Mr. Secretary General, he was here, as he was just said, but he gave us his heart, and we know that you're here with us in this particular fight that we are doing for climate change, so thank you very much for coming. The COP President, Alok Sharma, thank you for all you do. Honorable Ministers, my two there sisters, I cannot forget to always mention them, the Managing Director of IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, and my big sister, Ngozi, the Director General of WTO, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here today. It never rains, it pours. It certainly is pouring with challenges of climate change in Africa. Cyclones in southern Africa claimed over 1,000 lives and caused damage of over $2 billion from Mozambique to Malawi and Zimbabwe. Droughts in East Africa dried up crops. Desert locusts destroy food production on 1 million hectares. Floods in East Africa claimed 430 lives and affected more than 700,000 people. Across the Sahel, desertification and erosion pose great risks. Coastal countries, especially small island states such as Seychelles, Comoros, and Cabo Verde, face coastal erosion. The cost of erosion to the West African coastline alone is $3.8 billion. Africa loses $7 to $15 billion a year due to climate change, which could rise to $50 billion a year by 2040. The continent will need $336 billion to adapt to climate change. And this does not include several billion dollars needed to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa simply cannot breathe. It is raining, it is pouring, with floods of fiscal challenges. Africa, which accounts for not more than 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions, is now the most vulnerable region in the world to climate change. Yet Africa receives only 3% of global climate finance. The African Development Bank has been at the forefront of the climate agenda for Africa. The bank will double its climate finance to $25 billion by 2025. We will devote 40% of our total investments to climate. I want to thank the UK government and my dear friend Alok Sharma, the COP26 president, for the UK government's recent decision to provide a guarantee of $2 billion to the African Development Bank to help it leverage its balance sheet and to further expand climate financing, especially for adaptation. I'd like to thank you very, very much, and all of the UK government. And Honourable Minister, thank you very much. I saw you yesterday. I'm most grateful. This will help us to do more. We are sharply focusing on adaptation. I am pleased that the African Development Bank Group is the only multilateral development bank to have achieved and exceeded parity for adaptation. We surpassed 50-50% parity between adaptation and mitigation in 2018 and reached 55% and 63% for climate adaptation in 2019 and 2020, respectively. We were greatly honored that the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres praised our leadership on global adaptation for the climate in his speech at the United Nations General Assembly when he said, the African Development Bank set the bar by devoting 50% of its climate finance to adaptation. All should do so. To further accelerate delivery of more financial resources for adaptation in Africa, the African Development Bank and the Global Center for Adaptation have launched the African Adaptation Acceleration Program. Our target is to mobilize $25 billion for climate adaptation. As His Excellency, my dear brother, President Tshisekedi mentioned in his eloquent and powerful address, the African Development Bank has committed already $12.5 billion towards the program. Your Excellencies, Africa is here with 50% equity. we need 50% equity commitments of the balance of $12.5 billion from developed partner countries. The African Development Banks work together with the Global Center for Adaptation program. This Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program is a game changer for Africa to develop impacts at scale and to deliver fast, as was mentioned by my dear brother, Patrick. It will support 30 million farmers with digital climate advisory services. The Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation Program, supported by the African Development Bank and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, has already delivered climate-resilient technologies for 11.2 million farmers in just 2 years. With the African Adaptation Acceleration Program, we expect to reach 40 million farmers. We plan to help farmers to produce 100 million metric tons of food, and that will be enough to feed 200 million people. And with that, we will cut the hunger in Africa down by 80%. I've been in this field for a lot of years. I've never been this passionate and convinced that actually achieving zero hunger in Africa is well within our reach. The African Adaptation Acceleration Program would provide $3 billion to finance support for youth-led businesses that are green businesses and their enterprises. The program will integrate climate resilience into $7 billion worth of infrastructure investments. It will also deploy innovative approaches to mobilize additional financing at scale to the private sector. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we don't need more facts. We need more finance. There is the fierce urgency of now, to quote former US President Barack Obama. And Mr. Secretary Blinken, it's good to see you here. Let's get started with the $12.5 billion. It's a down payment for a more resilient future. Thank you again for coming, and thank you very much.